My mic's been on since your crotch was in the mic.
Perfect. That's a great way to start. Great segue for all the people that have no idea what you're talking about. Welcome to Growing Up Punk, the podcast about punk rock and all of its friends. My name is David. My friend here is Aaron. Good evening, sir.
Hey, what's up?
I don't know if I just peeked behind the curtain a little bit with that by saying good evening to you. Now people know that we record in the evening. That's
Do they think we were like 9 a.m. or what?
That's stuff they're not supposed to know. They're not supposed to know that, man.
We got to keep something hidden, otherwise there's no mystique to the show.
That's fair. Speaking of mystique, now I'm about to, speaking of peeking behind the curtain, I'm about to say something that may or may not actually result in anything, but we're trying to see if we can do a video form of this podcast. As poor as it may look, you can see us in our dingy basements. My basement especially, the lighting is very dingy because I'm trying to make up for a crappy webcam right now that will hopefully be remedied in a little while. So we'll see how this goes. But if you by chance are watching,
and I finally got good lighting so you can see me instead of being super
see
dingy.
you. Yeah, and then you the way you're set up right now, it's great because it just frames your wall that you worked so diligently on. I actually made a joke about that in, I believe it's our What a Week number 5, the one that just came out as we're recording this. Now that I think about it, there will be another one out by the time this is out. But I made, because you had said that you were reading some of your old alternative press magazines, and so I made a joke about how you were just doing arts and crafts with them, which wasn't entirely a joke because it's true. You've decorated a wall behind you, and it looks pretty sweet.
That is true. My wife was reading those What a Week blog posts last night, and she got a kick out of that. So as soon as she read that, she knew what you were talking about. So.
Yeah. I even dropped it twice in there, I think. I forget what the other one was, but there was another reference about arts and crafts time. So that's pretty funny. But hey, if you're new to the show, welcome, and we should give you all that important information. For instance, you can go follow us on all your social media places. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Growing Punk Pod. You will find both mine and Aaron's Instagrams and Twitters linked there as well. We've also got merch. So if you want a t-shirt, specifically a t-shirt with a picture of you and I riding a horse on the back, which, speaking of your wife, she is the one who illustrated that. So
she's the one that dreamt of that, and that's what happened.
Well, you dreamt of it. She just brought it into reality. But yeah, that is up. So you can go buy that. There are a couple of t-shirt designs there. If you want to get them. We're also on Discord now. So this is something that we just started. It's a Discord that we started, which, if you're like, what is Discord? It's basically just like a group chat sort of thing that we started with some other podcast friends of ours and then some of their listeners. So if you want to be a part of it, we're talking about all things punk rock and a lot of pizza talk. There's a lot of pizza talk. In fact, the group is called the Pizza Crust Posers. I had to think about that.
Nice.
But yeah, both of those things are linked at our website, which is growingpunkpod.com. So you can find both those there. You can also find a link to our Patreon there. So if you like what we do and you want to support us and you want to get some bonus episodes in your ears, and if you want to read some every now and then, some bonus blogs or videos, stuff like that, there will be extra content on there. $5 a month. That's all it is. $5 a month. So and actually, the video form of this podcast, assuming it works, if it's if we get the kinks worked out or not, that'll be a Patreon bonus too. So if you want to see those, if you want to see what we look like in our dingy basements, so that all your wildest fantasies and dreams can come true, well, here we are for you. Just join our Patreon, $5 a month. That's also
with the $5 a month. I can't help but think on those old ads for World Vision stuff, for the price of a coffee a day. And for ours, it's for the price of a coffee a day, just for one day.
Just for one day.
You can have Patreon. It's not even every day. It's just one day.
Yeah. Hey, if one day a month you decided to be just a grumpy old asshole because you didn't get your coffee, we appreciate it. That's you can find it at patreon.com/growingpunkpod, or it's also linked at our website, growingpunkpod.com. So check all that out. So yeah. This is our first, I want to say, our first regular episode in a little bit, because we started a series on MX. Yeah, we started a series on MXPX, which we're continuing with this episode, and we've just had some not that there were scheduling issues by any means. It was just we had a ton of interviews that were coming up that we wanted to release that were exciting. Of course, a
Yeah.
couple of interviews with Steve Kravac. We had the interview with Brian McTurnan. So it was just like producer month for whatever reason. We were just chatting with producers that worked on killer albums, and of course with all the Slick Shoes release stuff, we had some kind of special episodes around that. But and just rambling, because then last week was a regular episode. We just had a guest.
Right.
And that
Yeah,
guest
yeah.
was Roger of No Motive, which was an incredible episode. Hearing a lot of great feedback on that. It was so much fun getting to kind of, hear some of those insider stories or whatever about a couple of albums that for myself were some favorites. So
Yeah.
that was awesome. But we are back in the saddle, as the T-shirt states. We are back in
Oh
the
yeah,
saddle again.
we are ready to take over the world.
And we are ready to take over the world. But before we get into continuing our MXPX series, let's talk new music. What do you got? What's something that you've been listening to that you wanted to shine a little light on?
Yeah, well, it seemed like on this last week that there was a bunch of releases that came out. Just none of the ones that I saw popping up a lot were the ones that specifically interested me. Maybe I'll touch on those. If not, you can go find those somewhere else. But one for me was a band called Fit for a King. So they're a metalcore band that have been around for a number of years, and they released their new album, and they released a bunch of. So what's been kind of cool in this era of COVID is seeing how bands, are they still going to put extra effort into a CD release? What's that going to look like? And so they, on the release day, I believe, or that weekend, they put out a free, I think it was streamed on Twitch, but it was also on YouTube as well, where they did a free kind of live show. So it had like all the production that they normally would have had on a live show, and they played through the whole album as well as a few other songs. And so I thought that was a really cool way to get people, engaged in the music, and instead of just kind of streaming an album and not being able to see them live, for however long. So shout out to Fit for a King for making it special for their fans.
That's cool. Yeah, that I heard a lot of people talking about that one, or I should say I saw a lot of people talking about it on, I want to say, the Labeled podcast Facebook group, maybe. Something about, anyway, it was popping up everywhere. The record or song, the record and song that I wanted to mention, it's funny because we were texting about this earlier. You're like, well, I guess I have like a heavier pick. And then I said, well, that's great, because my pick is like the opposite of heavy. My pick would be Into It, Over It. They just released their album Figure. And the best way I can describe this for anyone who hasn't heard Into It, Over It, it reminds me of Death Cab for Cutie and the Decemberists, kind of like that sort of sound meets, I'd say, like Owen, a band called Owen, which is like Mike Kinsella from American football. I mean, he's more specifically now Mike Kinsella of Owen. That's been the longer lived project, I think. But he does a lot of really intricate acoustic work on those Owen projects, and there's kind of some of that going on here. But yeah, it's kind of just this really good, for me, it was a really good record, kind of like leading into fall, the time of year that we've got here. I wrote a review of it. Actually, it's up at growingpunkpod.com if you want to read it. But the song that I specifically wanted to kind of highlight, I guess you could say, would be the song Brushstrokes. So, yeah, that was a lot of that record. It kind of surprised me, actually, where it came from. Because
is it a catchy album, or is it more kind of indie feel, like a little bit more obscure?
No, I'd say it's catchy. Like it's quite catchy. The song Brushstrokes, especially, I kind of point out in the review that I wrote that, there's no chorus on that song, but the way he kind of leads into every verse, is really catchy. And then you don't notice that there's no chorus. I think because of how specifically repetitive he is with the word brushstrokes, kind of going into the different verses and what have you. But yeah, no, I think it's pretty catchy. It was a record. I was really excited for Knuckle Puck's new album, which came out.
Yeah, and
it's fine. I like it more than I would say I like their last album, Shapeshifter. I think Copacetic I really liked. Shapeshifter I was kind of and this one I think is better than Shapeshifter, at least kind of on early listen. But it still wasn't something that really immediately grabbed me. It's a lot slicker sounding Knuckle Puck. Like, I think the production values have gone up. That's been one criticism I've had of Knuckle Puck for a long time, is that their production always felt like over compressed and just kind of a little bit messy. I know a lot of people, I can remember reading different reviews where they said how great it sounded. I'm like, excuse me, really? Like, I think it's quite the opposite. But anyway, it's a fine album, but Into It Over It kind of sort of surprised me in just how I kept going back to that one, listening to it a number of times. So yeah, if you're looking for something a little more mellow because it's, you know, getting colder and the leaves are falling, at least where we live, you know, it's a good one for you. So let's get into some more MXPX, shall we? We're gonna talk about secret. Yeah, we're gonna. So the series that we're doing, if you're just jumping in with us here, is we're talking about MXPX, but it's everything that came after the ever-passing moment. So we've only done one episode so far, which was, of course, Before Everything and After, and Panic. And I know there were some EPs and stuff that kind of came in there, especially looking back, like the Renaissance EP technically came after the ever-passing moment. And I think we'll get there, but we're just going through the full lengths first. So we're moving on to Secret Weapon and Plans Within Plans. So yeah, I'm excited because for me, this is kind of another era of MXPX, where another golden era maybe of MXPX, even though, you know, they never reached like the actual commercial success that they would have. I don't think anyway. I could be wrong on that. Maybe you've got some numbers that'll surprise me, but you know, like, cause these albums came after the pop punk boom, things had kind of settled down in that world. Right. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers weren't anywhere the same, but let's start by talking about Secret Weapon.
Yeah, so Secret Weapon is the 8th studio album by MXPX and is considered a back to roots album for the group. So they were back on Tooth and Nail, which was, I think, pretty shocking for many people at that time, just because there was a bunch of controversy about the time that Slowly Going the Way the Buffalo came out. And so I think there were some that were kind of hesitant about that, but then others that were excited about that and glad that that had been all kind of cleared up. And then they were back with Aaron Sprinkle producing, who did their first album, Pokin' At Ya. And so that was kind of a cool relationship. I don't know how I feel about, you know, the whole kind of tagline, back to roots. Sometimes I'm like, is that just like an easy way to kind of say like, oh, they just kind of fell back to what they were doing before, or, you know, they tried something new, they failed, back to the roots. It's like, get people excited, but is it just kind of like a cop-out? I don't know. I don't really love that. I mean, there are some bands when I see that, it's like, oh, okay, I'm excited about that, but I don't you know, and with, like, especially Panic, like, I would have said Panic was back to roots, because, I mean, that came out before this, and so, you know, that album, while it did have still some mainstream stuff on it, it did kind of bring that back. So anyways, my little rant on that. But
Panic definitely was, obviously, when we discussed this, was darker and a little more raw than especially Before Everything and After. But I can see where they're coming from in saying this is like a back to roots thing, especially, obviously, you tie in Tooth and Nail. But I think just the overall sound kind of stuck closer to that than even Panic did. Because, yeah, you said Panic had, like, I think of songs like Wrecking Hotel Rooms. And I'm like, right. I don't know if a song like that, granted, they had a song like Chick Magnet on Life in General, right? Which was kind of a complete left turn for a song. But it also felt a little more in line, I guess, with Chick Magnet, because, you know, at that time, like, swing and ska was really a big thing that was kind of working in the pop punk world, right? So
right.
Back in the day. But yeah, no, with this record, I think it just felt overall, I would agree with that it felt overall like a return to form even for MXPX.
Yeah, which, you know, maybe some people wanted, maybe some people didn't. I don't remember exactly what my thoughts were, you know, after Panic, whether I was thinking like, okay, what direction are they going to go? Is it going to be, you know, more dark, more pop, or whatever? But anyways, I get it's just kind of a commercial way of engaging people and getting them excited, and without saying anything about the music, it gives people an understanding of kind of the direction they're going. So but yeah, the album debuted.
That's a good one.
At number 76 on the Billboard 200. So you're mentioning with numbers.
Yeah,
I couldn't find exactly a number what that was, but I would say for that era, that's probably pretty decent for a band like them. The album featured guest appearances from members of Bad Religion, Sugar Cult, and Good Charlotte, which I didn't know about the Good Charlotte one, but apparently the brothers did some guest vocals on one of the B-sides or the extra tracks. So
Yeah,
and
I think I could probably tell you.
well, this album actually came in 3 different versions. So there's a standard version with 16 tracks, a double 12-inch version with special artwork, and then a special edition with a making of DVD, new artwork, and 3 extra tracks. So I think it was one of the tracks on there, I believe, that I saw, but I couldn't remember exactly. And none of those extra tracks really, at least title-wise, didn't stand out to me as songs that I had heard and loved.
So, yeah, for sure. I'm just looking because I have the vinyl in front of me because there are a few notes I had about it. But the Hoo Ha Jangle is the song that features Benji Madden.
What does that even mean?
He also sings on, I don't know. He also sings on Tightly Wound. I think I saw on, maybe it was Wikipedia that was Hoo Ha Jangle. I can't remember because I believe there was a secret song on the CD. I never owned the CD, but I think when I read like the features, I feel like, or like guest appearances, I feel like it listed Tightly Wound and it said / another song that was listed as a secret track. So I don't know if it was the Hoo Ha Jangle. I've always hated that. I don't remember, to be fair. So I own, like I said, I did a video on it. I brought it with me. That I don't know how well I know side D or side 2 of record B or whatever, or side B of record 2, I guess they listed here, because I'm like looking at the songs and I'm like, I don't like the Hoo Ha Jangle. I think I can hear the melody of the chorus in my head, and I'm like, it's not really a great song. So it's not a surprise that it wasn't originally on there. It is a surprise, I feel, that it has a feature from Good Charlotte, basically. That's kind of interesting. But now I want to go back and listen closer to see, because I'm pretty sure it's just backup vocals. But so anyway, continue on.
Yeah, well, that's all the notes I got for.
Okay, well, what were your thoughts? What are your overall thoughts on the record? Did you buy this when it came out? Did you kind of listen to it later? Because what year I forget what year this was.
I think this was 2008. I think I remember seeing.
So we weren't in the streaming world yet. Like that wasn't a thing, I don't think. I mean, obviously, like MP3s were for sure a thing, but I don't think we were in like the world where you had streaming services yet.
Yeah, well, actually, I think I have 2 copies of this on CD. I think I have the original and then that bonus one with the DVD on it. I don't remember exactly. I don't love this album. Like, I've seen lots where like people, this is one of their favorites, or going back to their old style. Every time I listen through it, like, there's definitely some really good songs on here that I love, but overall, this album for some reason doesn't super stand out to me.
We're gonna have a fight. We're about to throw down, because literally my first note on this album is I love this record.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe I just need to listen to it more. I just love the other ones. Yeah, there's definitely some really good songs on here. I don't know what. Maybe I'm just questioning myself here, but I as I went through trying to pick songs, like I felt like there was enough. I was like, I don't know about this one and this one, and
we actually, which is interesting because we picked extra songs on this episode. Normally we pick 3 songs to kind of highlight, and we did 4 per album on this one, which is also what we did on the last, like with No Motive, and that was purely because Roger had some songs he wanted to share some thoughts on. But here's the thing. I really like this record. I wasn't keeping up with MXPX when it came out, so I never owned the CD. Like Panic was the last one I went into the store and bought. But as I mentioned, I do own it on vinyl. And I kind of got it because I started going through this thing where I was like, I just want to get MXPX vinyl, because I've shared this before, but they're a band that I credit for, me getting into music to the extent that, I have in my life. And so I felt like, even if, they weren't my favorite records, or I wasn't necessarily listening to that at that point in time, I felt like I needed to still support the band, just because it was like this thing where, like I said, I absolutely credit them for getting me into music. So when I started, kind of collecting vinyl again, I was like, okay, I got to get some of these MXPX records I've never owned on CD. I've never physically owned. So I bought this. But I do remember listening to it at some point. I must have, I must have gotten, maybe I bought it on iTunes or I downloaded it MP3 or whatever. But I can remember listening to it because it stands out in my head, this album, in a house that we were living in when I was going to college. I was in my second year of college, and I can remember, kind of first listening to this record. Now, you mentioned kind of the different versions of this. The vinyl comes with different artwork, which I don't know. Like, did the CD come with this artwork at all, where it's like the homemade rocket ship?
It might be on the inside. I should have grabbed it here before, but so
yeah,
it definitely doesn't have that on the front cover.
Yeah, and so that's one thing I like about this vinyl issue is that, and I don't know if there was another vinyl release where it was just the normal cover, because there is the picture from the normal cover on the inside where they're like all huddled over like the table or whatever, working on what I can only assume now is this rocket, or whatever it's supposed to be. But yeah, so this I felt the need to kind of go out and buy it. I love the artwork that kind of stood out to me. It also features, this album, I think, one of the best opening tracks of maybe even any MXPX album. It is up there. The song Secret Weapon, I think, to like start an album is for sure up there when comparing to their other records as far as opening track. It just, like, from the get-go kind of punches you right in the face. And we talked a lot about features on Before Everything and After, but this record has some great features, which you mentioned, including, so you said, a member of Bad Religion, which is Brian Baker. And yeah, he's definitely a member of Bad Religion, but the dude's also played in some pretty notable bands of the past, including Dag Nasty, and he was in Minor Threat. So like, guy's been around, and like I said, Bad Religion is kind of what he's been, his main thing. And the final thing I like that I noticed when I was kind of studying, or not studying, but like prepping for this, because I kept putting these records on and listening that way on vinyl more so than on my phone or whatever. And so I was looking at the sleeves and whatnot. And I don't know if the CD does this, but on the inside of the vinyl, for all the songs, it's got the lyrics, but then it also lists, who played and who sang what, sort of thing, right? Which is a great way to figure out where the features are. But then it also lists the snare drum that Yuri used on every song.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just like this weird little note where I'm like, why? I wonder why they felt the need to include that. Like, oh, and on this song, like, let's see if I can, it's kind of small and it's not overly bright in here.
Well, there's a lot of bands, even just recently, and it will, on the Slick Shoes one, Joe mentioned about using different snares, and I know on the Newfound Glory album, Cyrus on one of their studio updates talked about using lots of different snares, and which I think is cool to list it, because even myself as a drummer, when I listen to an album, I can't really like pull that out, right? Like once you get it, compressed and mixed and mastered, it's like, yeah, it sounds like a snare. Most people wouldn't know from one song to the other. So I actually do like that they included that in there for those that might want that information.
It is for sure neat. I'm just wondering like why. It's just interesting that it's like, I mean, I guess maybe he wasn't, changing cymbals or anything. He was just changing his snare. But I find it interesting that it doesn't list like, oh, on this song, Tom used this Les Paul, and on this one, he used this Les Paul.
Right.
Or, which could be a thing because maybe he just used the same Les Paul on every song, right? Like it very well could be that, and that Yuri was the only one who was really changing anything up from song to song. And so it is neat, I think, that they listed it. I don't know if I've ever really seen that, but I just thought it was kind of interesting and worth noting. So let's get into the songs then. The first song that we're going to talk about is Punk Rock Celebrity. This song is a point of contention, and full pun intended, because there's a song called Contention on here. But when it came to covering this record, so why don't you share your thoughts on Punk Rock Celebrity?
Yeah, just before that, I want to just make a quick mention of...
We've moved on.
Of Secret Weapon being the opening track.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about the title track being the opening track?
It's interesting.
That's pretty rare for an album.
Yeah, I've never really looked to see how often that happens. It's fine. It's such a strong song that I have no issue with that.
Yeah. And maybe that's what they were going for. Just start it, get it in people's heads. Yeah. Back to their roots, baby. Here we go. Title track.
Look how fast we're playing.
There we go.
But yeah, Punk Rock Celebrity. What are your thoughts on this song?
Yeah, so I love the beginning of this song. It's got, a classic MXPX feel to it. It's a bit... I do find that it's almost a bit too similar to the song Shut It Down, though. It, kind of has the same vibe to it, and I always find myself starting to sing the chorus for Shut It Down when I realize it's not that song. So when I was listening to it this week, I would, pause it right before the chorus and just sing into Shut It Down, and it's this is, just a little bit... whatever the chord structure or the key or whatever was a bit similar, but the lyrics are interesting. Kind of talking about what punk rock celebrities being fleeting. Wondering if this was maybe influenced by a bit of their mainstream success and having more run-ins and tours with quote celebrity punk bands, and maybe coming to that realization that they just didn't fit into that mold. At the halftime point of the song is where it kind of goes downhill for me. And so in saying that, I realize this is a unique take on the song for them, and I kind of get what they're going for. But I just find that for me, it kind of totally ruins the song. It just annoys me when that keyboard and that "you've made such a big mess" part comes in. It's okay, I'm done with this song. And it's always been like that. I've never appreciated this song. And so, like I said, I'm assuming they were going for something a little bit different and, maybe a bit more dramatic or whatever, but I don't know. It just kills it for me.
This song is so interesting for me because, I like what you're saying about the lyrics. Lyrically, it's never really been a song that I've thought was that great. I'm entertained by the fact that it's another song that they spelled punk rock the way that they obviously are kind of known for spelling it. It was like there's a little bit of a throwback even in there. And the thing I like about it, it's very much at times, obviously, and I think you said this in our text messages, very much at times feels like an MXPX take on Green Day, American Idiot Green Day, right? Especially, obviously, you talk about the change, and I'll get to that. But even like that opening guitar riff, that's kind of like the, kind of like half clean, half distorted guitar that Tom's just playing, like kind of strumming out the chords, really reminds me of American Idiot Green Day sort of stuff. But as soon as it kicks actually into the song and the rest of the band comes in, I think it's so good. And actually, having said that, makes it sound like I think that opening guitar is bad, which I don't. I like it. But then it kicks in and it kind of goes a different direction that Green Day wouldn't have gone at that time, right? So kind of like going more back to like the skate punk sort of sound that MXPX, kind of was known for, especially on albums like Life in General and Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo. But and then when it drops and changes time signatures, because it changes to 3/4 time, like in that the breakdown at the end, I really like it in the sense that it's for sure MXPX doing something they've never done before, but I also think they pull it off. And it's just this like one song. I think the first time I heard it, I was like, "What's going on? Why are we doing this?" Like Green Day American Idiot was very much a thing at that point, obviously. And so we'd all heard that, like that kind of, not show tuney, but like sounding like it's coming from a musical with just those quick changes and sort of, the overall vibe. But as time kind of went on, the more I grew to appreciate and really actually enjoy what they're doing there. And it is a part on the album that I look for every time. And I think it's because of the different elements they bring into it, right? Like because of what the first half or so of that song sounds like. It's just like, it does sound a lot like, I was trying to think if it was Shut It Down or if it's actually Secret Weapon that it reminds me of, because I always
kind of a ball in the same vein, those three.
In the verse, I go to sing, "You've always got a problem with authority," which is like Secret Weapon, right? So I'm like, I always go to sing that on the verses, and it's interesting, that you go to Shut It Down on the choruses. But anyway, all in all, I think it's a great song that I think over time I've grown to love even more.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have maybe liked to hear, like, I'm not opposed to them experiencing something in that direction. I just, maybe it needed to be its own song or something like more towards the end of the album, or I don't know.
Right. I did want to point out too, so Aaron Sprinkle does backup vocals on this song, and listening on headphones when I was kind of like actually writing notes on these specific songs, I was like, man, he has such a great voice, and I've thought that
It's
for
amazing.
a long time. Like,
Yeah.
I love his work that he did with Fair, for instance, and so just to like, there was always something about the backup vocals that stood out to me on this song, and I never really put my finger on it because I didn't pay close enough attention. But when I was listening today and then like reading the liner notes, I was like, oh, that's Aaron Sprinkle. And then listening closer, I'm like, it sure is, and he sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And it just adds a layer to the song for me. So why don't we get in then to the next one, which I kind of alluded to earlier. We're going to talk about Contention. So yeah, go ahead. This was your pick.
Yeah. Well, before that,
You got to stop doing this,
Aaron's,
man.
Look, I got some extra comments. Sorry.
Start putting your hand up.
I would love to hear more songs with Mike and Aaron. I feel like their vocals would really complement each other.
Yeah.
Like Mike's got, kind of that like classic, like a bit kind of raspy punk vocal, and Aaron's vocals are a lot more like, they're higher ranged, a lot more like kind of cooey. And yeah, I think it'd be really cool to hear what those two could come up with.
I wonder if he did. I'm curious now. I'm sure this answer, and I'm sure I've heard this answer, but I'm wondering if he did any backup vocals on Pokin' At Ya. Now that you're bringing it up, and what it would have sounded like back then. Obviously, MXPX was a very different beast back then.
Yeah, and I don't even know how much Aaron had have done back then either.
Well, he was. Yeah, I mean, he was in. I mean, that's fair. I don't know if he sang, because I think he was in Poor Old Lou, right? And
yeah.
I don't know if he sang in Poor Old Lou or not, or if his brother sang. I don't, I'm not well versed enough on that early Tooth and Nail stuff really, to dive into that. But yeah, their voices together on Punk Rock Celebrity, yeah, it's very good. So
yeah,
Contention,
bring it back.
Bring it back.
Okay.
Contention. Quit changing the subject.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
So this song brings me back to, kind of Fist versus Tact and the theme Fiasco from Slowly Going the Way. It has that hardcore feel to it, a little bit of, chaos. Not too chaotic, but, it stays on track and it's still very much to the point. So much so that it's only just over 1 minute long. But I don't mind a short song if it gets stuck in my head, and this one definitely does. Not because it's necessarily catchy, but it has a different sort of hook to it as they sing, that, hey, contention, hey, it's killing us. Like that part always gets stuck in my head. And it's cool to have a short song, but with a powerful message and music to back it up. And so I find with songs like this, it's like, it's done. It's like, oh, I could have gone for, another verse, another part to that song. And so I think that's good. You keep it short, keep people wanting more, and kind of pack a punch in there.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because you basically covered my entire first note, is that lyrically, this song reminds me of Fist versus Tact, because it seems to be talking about, the same themes as that song. Violence isn't really the answer type thing, right? It's also about the same length, which you mentioned, Fist versus Tact. I actually wrote this down as a whole minute and 12 seconds, and Contention is a minute and 18 seconds. So the time that they've, grown and matured, their songs have also gotten 6 seconds longer. And I really love, the best way I could describe it was like the gnarly guitar line after the second chorus.
Yeah.
He's literally, I think he's just playing 2 notes, if I recall, but just the way he kind of does it, it's not, and maybe that little thing is a feature, I'm not sure, because it's not a typical Tom Wisniewski line. It's great, but there are, over these 2 albums, and I have a note somewhere, I may have skipped it, or I'll hit it again here, but like, this is Tom Wisniewski at his absolute best as a guitar player. Like, obviously on Secret Weapon, there are 2 solos on that song. One of those solos is Brian Baker. The other is Tom. And he's like, there's just parts over these 2 records where he, whether he's busting into solos or just playing riffs that are, different than he's kind of more known for. He's typically, when I think of Tom Wisniewski, I think of, either just like straightforward, it was obvious that, he was kind of brought up on bands like the Ramones and, stuff like that, where it's just like straightforward, more,
definitely.
Chord driven songs with the odd riff, and the riffs were never, in my mind, too great. Like, he's not like a riff writer where you're like, man, that song is that riff, or that riff is that song, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But there are parts on this record and on Plans Within Plans where he is just absolutely slaying that guitar, I think. And it's pretty great. And this is one of those, like that line, like I said, it's not a Tom Wisniewski typical line, and it's not anything crazy, but it's just like something that kind of comes from out of left field. And you talked about the chaos in this song. I think it really brings that chaos in, especially for the end when Mike then just starts, I think it's the end of this one. He's like screaming like crazy. I can't remember. Maybe that's on the next record. Anyway, I have a tendency to put all the notes together. But yeah, it's Contention is a great song, and it does remind me of Fist versus Tact, which would be it would be fair to say they've gone back to their roots as much as
there you go. Okay,
I'll make you believe it one way or another. Let's get into the next song then, which was a pick of mine. That would be Chop Shop. This is one of the Chop Shop. This is one of the first songs I can actually remember liking on this album. In fact, the reason I can remember sort of where I was when I was listening to this album is because I used this song as like an alarm on my BlackBerry to wake up in the morning. And
yikes.
I can tell you that pick scrape to start the song will get you out of bed in a hurry, especially if your alarm is turned up. Like, it got to the point where I was like, I can't use this as an alarm anymore, because there was a period of time. Imagine. There was a period of time where it felt like anytime I'd hear this song, I'd just like kind of like cringe a little bit and be like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed. But it is a song that, I've loved from the first time I heard it. And it actually features a feature that you didn't mention.
And I was going to ask, that's cool you have those notes, because I was like, okay, there's for sure a guest vocal on here.
Yeah, and
so I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, his name is, it's Mike Moen or Mike Moan, I'm not sure, but of the band Neutral Boy, which is I had to look them up. They're an interesting band in the fact that Mike Moen would go on to work with MXPX a couple more times at least, and the band, I was like, wow, that's interesting that those two bands crossed paths. But I mean, it's the punk rock world. Anything can happen, right? But yeah, like I said, it's not actually the last time we'll hear from Mike Moen. He's guested on another MXPX song that we might talk about down the line. And the song is actually a true story about a murderer in Bremerton, which I thought was interesting. And what I really find interesting about this song is that, so MXPX being on Tooth and Nail here, I mean, I don't know where they were. I'm trying to think over the last couple of albums if there was a point where it was like, okay, they clearly haven't written a song that mentions or is about God in quite some time. I don't think there's any on this record. I want to say maybe there was for sure one on Before Everything and After, like I think of the Capitol.
Right.
And then maybe there's
That's what
one.
Secret Weapon's all about. Come on.
Yeah. Maybe there's one on Panic. I can't remember, but this song, the fact that it's on Tooth and Nail, and Jesus Freak Hideout was still I don't know if they would cover MXPX now, right? Like, I don't know if Jesus Freak Hideout did a review or an interview heading into self-titled, or if, MXPX would even do an interview. But they did do an interview about this record with Jesus Freak Hideout, in which Mike was talking about how, there's some stuff on this record that's not PG. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's a great way to this song surprises me that, this record would have been sold, in Christian bookstores. And there's this song about a guy it's called Chop Shop because it's about a guy who's basically axing his victims apart. So like, it's pretty violent sort of stuff. But what were your thoughts on this song?
Yeah, it's definitely a little intense lyrically, and again, it's not my favorite song lyrically, but again, it's not a first person, right? It's about a story, so it definitely fits. The music and the lyrics definitely fit well together on the song, and I really do like the music on this one. I could really do without the sirens. That's one like. There's multiple bands that put sirens in songs, and every time I'm like, oh, that just...
Yeah, but this isn't a siren. It's his guitar. He's
playing... There's actual sirens at the end of this song.
I still think it's actually his guitar. Like,
really?
I think when I think about it, I'm like, that's funny that he made a siren. Because I've done the same thing on my guitar. You kind of figure out what the two notes are, and you can make a siren sort of sound, right? I think it's still his guitar. I mean, it could be. I could be wrong, but I feel like it's actually still his guitar at the end. But I
mean, it fits it, right? Somebody call the cops. You have the sirens, so I don't know. Just at the end of that, I was like, oh, I could have done without that. But it's definitely a unique song on here, and cool that they kind of took on and maybe a bit more touchy of a topic or whatever. And
right,
I wonder what, I mean, besides it being something that happened in Bremerton, like I wonder why this specific incident inspired them or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, because he didn't mention why I think that he wrote the song, but I don't know. I like it. It's stood out lyrically. It's unique, and
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think it's bad by any means. Like there are some, like we've talked about this, where there are some MXPX songs where I'm like, why did you choose to go that route lyrically or whatever? But this one, I don't know. I also like stories that kind of tell songs, and I think this one does that. So
Yeah, for sure.
and that, yeah, the guest vocal on the chorus, like Mike Moen, he's got a
Yeah, it
pretty,
adds a lot to it.
yeah, he's got a pretty gruff sounding voice. I think he actually sounds, I feel, even more gruff in his band. Maybe that's just because the production on this record is much cleaner than anything his band has released, but
Right.
cool nonetheless. Let's get into the last song that we're going to talk about off of Secret Weapon. That would be "You're on Fire." So
Yeah.
tell us about this one. Why you picked this one?
So I'll just comment that I think when you mentioned, I can't remember what song it was. Maybe I said something about a video song, and then you were like, well, I think this was a video
yeah.
song or
Yeah,
one
well,
of the singles or whatever. And
yeah, that was,
and,
I wanted to do "Shut It Down," I think.
oh, yeah.
And you're like, well, that's pretty popular. It's a video, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if this one had a video. I didn't look it up, but there was a radio station I worked at the time, and this was the song we played off this album.
Yeah, which would make sense. This is definitely a radio song.
Yeah.
Fits well in there. Maybe they're the most kind of radio friendly song on the album. And I've always loved this song. I love that recognizable intro riff. It kind of hooks your ear right away, and it's got a really catchy chorus too. I've always liked the positivity that this song brings.
Mm-hmm.
Encourages the listener to face their darkest conflict, despite the road to healing hurting more than anything. And I think we all have situations in our life that can relate to that, whether it's a relationship or something more inward. We all have things to face, but when you're on fire, so to speak, that you can blaze through those obstacles and overcome them. So that's a cool. There's lots of positive messages on here. Secret Weapon as well, and others throughout. And I like during the verses the guitar following a single string picking pattern, which is maybe a bit different than the usual, like palm muting or just straight playing through the verses. Makes the pre-chorus stand out a bit more, like the drums kind of come in like the do-tu-pla to boo-tu-pla.
Yeah.
And the downside to this song for me is the bridge. I'm not a fan of that like single note with the effects. That we're
gonna fight. We're gonna fight.
So
we are gonna fight.
To me, that just kind of puts a damper on it. Like it kind of kills the energy to it. And
I hope you're ready to fight.
So I'll say it ends back on the chorus, and then ends with the intro, which for me is a high note. It brings it back. It's like, okay, there's just something about that. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on why you like that kind of weird little note thing.
Because I like delay, man. That's all it boils down to.
Okay.
I'm a guitar player who likes delay. No, I think
but MXPX
again,
isn't a delay band.
While they are there, and I think on Before Everything and After, I think they had a song where we talked about the delay that Tom was using because it was a I can't remember which song specifically now, but it was a riff that kind of reminded us of Angels and Airwaves sort of thing. But
Right.
But yeah, no, this song. I had a couple notes here because like this song for me has always been sort of like one of those. It's fine. It's interesting because when I think of Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo, if I want to compare those two records, for me, this song is kind of like the I'm Okay, You're Okay. Like I like I'm Okay, You're Okay. I think it's a great song. And obviously in the Steve Kravac interview that you did, he talked about how like it originally wasn't going to be a thing that they were doing, and then I think their A&R guy or whatever was like, yo, this song could be a hit, like you should put it on the record. It originally being a Cooties song, and but it's just kind of this song where I'm like, yeah, it's good and it's a radio song, and that's fine, and we'll leave it at that. It's not one of my favorites necessarily. There were things I like about it, and that guitar is actually one of them. I really, for whatever reason, I think again because it's just something a little bit different. I feel like, especially coming into this record at this time, MXPX was trying things that were different from what they had done in the past, and I felt like they were having success with that. Like I think they had tried to do things a little different on Before Everything and After, and as we discussed, it kind of fell flat for me. Panic, I think they were kind of starting to mix that a little bit, and I just really think with this record it came together for me, like that. Obviously the influence of their roots or whatever you want to call it, going kind of back to that sound, but also then trying things that like just different parts of this album that felt like it had a little more attitude maybe than they'd had on their last couple of records. Panic again started to show that a little bit, but I felt like we kind of got it here, but polished, and that just trying something different on that bridge for me really worked. It also features, it's funny because backup vocals on this song I originally thought again were Aaron Sprinkle, and I was going to comment on that and be like, man, here he is again. But it's actually Seth Roberts of Eager Seas, but you might you might know them a little better as Watashi Wa.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, which if you haven't listened to the record Eager Seas by Watashi Wa, I'd say do it. It's interesting because I think that feature probably came together because of Eager Seas. Because this album,
Mike produced that one.
Yeah, well, and I just looked. So like, Secret Weapon came out in 2007, and Eager Seas came out in 2006. And yeah, Mike is all over that record. In different ways.
Seth had also done the artwork for Panic, and I think also sang on a song on that record too. So they've kind of been around.
I wonder, do you know who did the artwork on this one?
I'm gonna guess that was probably Invisible Creature, or maybe it was called Asterisk at that time. Whoever was doing kind of the tooth and nail art, it kind of looks like their classic kind of flashy, polished look.
I was just looking to see because I know I saw a note somewhere in one of these about who did the artwork, but I couldn't remember if it was. Oh yeah, spoiler alert: he comes back.
Who's that?
It's Seth.
Seth. Okay,
yeah. But yeah. So anyway, You're on Fire. I've always liked the song, but it's always just kind of, like I said, been one of those songs where it's like, all right, it's there for me. I do like the positivity in the song though, for sure. And just kind of like where Mike was sort of starting to go, but I think we saw that a little bit on Panics, where he was starting to go with that. So I don't know if you had any other I did have one other notable song that I wanted to mention on here. If you did as well, we brought it up. It's the song Shut It Down. But the thing I really wanted to kind of point out about it is that the beginning of the song, is actually an homage. Are we an homage podcast or a homage podcast?
Ooh,
Homage,
I like the homage.
Homage. Okay, they're paying homage to the Clash. I don't know if that works, but with the whole at the beginning, it says this is a public service announcement with guitars.
Oh, yeah.
So that's originally done like it's Mike saying it on here, but and I think actually in concert, Tom says it. I feel before they play Shut It Down, I think he actually says this is a public service announcement. I could be wrong though. It's been a while since I saw them, but it then explodes into a fantastic song. But that public service announcement bit actually comes from the song Know Your Rights by The Clash off of Combat Rock. And that album also features the songs Rock the Casbah and Should I Stay or Should I Go, which, speaking of Tom, MXPX has covered that song and Tom sings it, which is pretty cool. It's but yeah, I've really dug that song too. And the video has, like
it's a cool video.
Yeah, a rough, kind of look to it. It's pretty great.
Yeah, that's a good song as well. And yeah, that one I always think of the video. Just they're playing up on the roof, and I think they've got like fuzzed out TVs, and he's got the megaphone, and kind of a classic for this one.
Classic.
I do just want to say with the last song, it's not necessarily have anything
You're
against
doing
delay.
it again.
Yeah, dude,
done this.
I got to make what's the word? Try to make up for myself or whatever. Fight for my opinion. It's nothing to do with the delay. I don't mind that. I just wish it would have been something a little bit more interesting than just that single note going whew, whew.
But see, the thing I like about the single note is it really emphasizes the delay.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just a little too like alien ray gun shooting or something. But anyways, yeah. Well, all good.
Fine then. Let's move into the next record we're going to talk about. That being Plans Within Plans. So why don't you share your notes on this one?
So it says this one is the 11th studio album, but there wasn't that many, unless they're counting like covers record and something else in there. So I don't, because if Secret Weapon was the 8th, I was there 3 in between. So they must have whatever on Wikipedia or something counted the other ones. But anyways, this is the follow-up full length. So this is their first original album since 2007 Secret Weapon, so not 2008. So this album was.
Yeah, come on, man. I said 2007. Just a few
Oh,
minutes
sorry.
ago.
Maybe I had said 2008 or whatever. Anyways,
it's all good.
This album. So they left. I guess I don't know if they just had a deal for the one album on Tooth and Nail, but this album was released on MXPX's own label, Rock City Recording Company, as well as a few others in various plans within plans was. Ooh, as well as a few. I don't know what my notes said there. Sorry. So they had worked, with many great producers over the years. How do you feel it aided or hurt the band recording and producing it themselves after, So, and also during this time, I wanted to mention that, they'd kind of gone on an official hiatus. Tom and Yuri didn't want to tour anymore. And so Mike was kind of doing, everything on his own. I think this was maybe when he was doing the All-Stars and still kind of keeping MXPX going. But I remember this album being, kind of like his baby, like the thing he'd kind of been working on. And
before I answer your question about producers and stuff, I counted it out, and so they must be counting the on the cover albums in that to say it's their 11th in that particular entry. But anyway, either that or they're counting Let's Rock and Let It Happen and not the on the cover albums. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway,
like that.
Yeah. I think it was fine. Like, cause in the end, I think it was mixed. Yeah, it was mixed by Stephen Edgerton. But they I guess did all the engineering and stuff, which I don't know. I think it sounds great. I don't think there is any reason not to. Maybe these are I often looked at MXPX records as kind of like you could look at them in pairs, and they never really sounded alike from one record to the next. Like obviously going back, you had Pokin' At Ya into Teenage Politics. Those records sound nothing alike. Then you had, Life in General into Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo. Maybe the two that sounded the closest, and they're both Steve Kravac albums, but even then they still sound different, right?
Yeah.
And then you had, Ever Passing Moment, I guess, into Before Everything and After, and I don't think they sound alike. And then Plans is in there somewhere, I guess, because I often lump these two Panic is in there somewhere. I often lump Plans Within Plans and Secret Weapon kind of together. And I think they might be the two most similar in sound from one to the next as far as like overall production is concerned. And maybe that's just like, I don't know if that's because, they were engineering their own stuff or how that came to be. But spoiler alert, I really like this record too.
Yeah, me too.
But you talked about, this getting the feel that it was, kind of like Mike's sort of baby or whatever. I don't know. I'm assuming on the inside of the CD it has this as well, but on the inside of the record, there's actually like a little story that Mike has handwritten about how, the album was titled. And it says, it says, I struggled with this album title for a long time. I had been recording this album between tours and booking tours, studio sessions, and trying to live somewhat of a normal life. Life got in the way of that. Plans Within Plans was the only way I could describe all the mayhem that was going on behind the scenes of putting this collection of brand new songs together. I was and still am literally flying off the rails, trying to juggle all the jobs that need doing to keep this ship afloat. I'm the captain going down with the ship, but just maybe we'll make it to land before we all go down. Part of that, there's like this very like, oh man, like that sounds
almost like they're at the end or they're at the end of the line or something.
And it also sounds like it's not healthy for him, right? But obviously I think like in, looking back to see where they're at now, I think it's, I don't know where they were at specifically then, but reading that doesn't sound like it was very healthy for Mike. Looking now, it all seems to be in such a great place or whatever, right? And they're all working so well together. I remember this record coming out and being excited about it because of just that. Like the MXPX All-Stars thing wasn't really something I was interested in. And I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of cool that for a stretch, Chris Rowe was a member of MXPX All-Stars. So they were playing MXPX and Atari songs. I was like, that's incredible. I would go see that in a heartbeat. But just the overall idea then when he was no longer a part of it, it was just like, I don't know. But when they got, kind of announced this and got back together or whatever, because I'm assuming you watched the Both Ends Burning DVD.
Yeah.
Because that, I mean, when you see like when they end up coming back together, it's just like, phew. you know,
Yeah,
'cause-
yeah. There's lots of interesting stuff around this time. I mean, they'd been around for so long, and getting to that point where it's like, okay, touring full time is not really viable anymore. But Mike, this was, the other guys had other jobs. Mike didn't. This, he still wanted to keep pursuing it. So I think it's cool that he did it. From the sounds of it, he probably burnt himself out, a little bit at least in the process. But
yeah.
he was trying to keep the band going, and yeah. With that being said, I mean, this is an awesome album.
Yeah.
Assuming he probably did a lot, or if not all, the writing, and putting the songs together himself. I think he definitely did a great job of that. And so to my point with him producing, like, yeah, it made sense for him to do that. He wasn't going to go to a studio with a producer just by himself and
Right.
and whatever. But yeah, I wonder what kind of how he felt after 10 albums of being, and I mean, they had done some stuff on their own. I think, he recorded the Renaissance EP and probably some other stuff in there, but just, all those full lengths that had been, with quite a few big name producers in there. And so,
Yeah.
I'm sure there was some pressure and like, okay, like this is almost a new era of MXPX. Do I have what it takes to, kind of match the rest of the discography?
Yeah. And I think they did it. Going back to what I said about Secret Weapon and that opening track, I think Aces Up is another incredible opening track. Like, it just launches you into the album. And again, I really feel like this record, on a lot of it, really showed the growth of Mike as a lyricist at this time. There are some songs on here that are stand out in that regard, and Aces Up is one of them.
Yeah, that is a good one. I also do want to mention I love the artwork on this album.
Yeah,
I'm a sucker for band pictures, and it always bugs me when albums don't have a band picture in them.
So this one makes up for all the ones that don't, because it's got a ton of band pictures.
Well, yeah, it just kind of has that cool classic look of the live shot on the front. Like, it almost looks like it would be for a live record, and I don't know, there's just something that just kind of has that classic kind of retro almost look to it, which I think was really cool for this one. I remember seeing that and being really excited about that.
But yeah, as far as what I said about Seth earlier, because it does say on here, layout and design by Seth. It just says Seth. So whether or not it was him is interesting. But I do love, I've always loved the look of this record. And even just like the digital artwork, when you just see the cover, I'm like, yeah, it looks sweet. And then when I ordered the vinyl, it does not disappoint, because like you said, there's so many pictures on the inside. Then there's this like kind of handwritten note from Mike. The only downside is the vinyl didn't come with a lyric sheet in any way.
Oh, that's too bad.
It just says for lyrics and more, please visit mxpx.com.
Which I'm assuming it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been to their website in a long time, but
yeah, I don't think they have any lyrics on there.
Yeah. But yeah, it is as far as a layout design is concerned, it's fantastic. I think it's great, and like to see it in person when I got it, I was like, oh, it was even better. It met my expectations and exceeded them. So let's get into some of the songs though, unless you want to jump back again and talk about Aces Up.
That's no, take it away.
All right, so let's get into Screw Loose. So I just wanted to say one thing real quick, because much like Secret Weapon, and maybe it's why I kind of lump these two albums together, the first two tracks on both of those records, lights out good. And so Screw Loose is obviously the second track on this record. And this record starts with bangers back to back. I really feel this. So I said this about Secret Weapon, and I'm doubling down on this one, on Plans Within Plans. I think, which is funny when you think about the gap that happened between these records, because I think this was like Tom at his best as far as playing guitar is concerned. There's stuff all over this record that is just so good, ripping solos, like just riffs that are good. And it'll be interesting when we get into some of the other records that, I guess the other record that came after this as far as full lengths are concerned, because I don't know if I have those thoughts about his guitar playing now necessarily. But
so he for sure played those parts. It doesn't say anything, because every time I hear those, I'm like, it just doesn't sound like Tom's playing. But you'd think they would credit, if it was a guest guitar player.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read through everything here. Okay.
Oh, was that not Stephen Edgerton that played?
So let me read. All right. So it says MXPX is Yuri on drums and cymbals, Tom on electric guitars, Mike playing bass, vocals, additional guitars, keys and sequencing. And then as far as guests, there is no guest guitar on the Times by Jack Parker, which he was also there at that time. He was their second guitar player. But that's the only guest guitar listed on here. So
okay, could be.
yeah, I don't think Stefan had anything to do with the like actual production. I think he just mixed it.
Right.
But yeah, so as far as I know, I mean, it does say that Mike played additional guitars, so maybe all those absolutely like great riffs and stuff are Mike, but it doesn't say otherwise. So, but yeah, I don't know. I choose to believe that it's all Tom. If only he'd answer our requests on Instagram and stuff. He could have answered that question.
Yeah,
for us.
he just cut me out.
That's
cut
fine.
me out of the will.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this song?
Yeah, so I'm going to paraphrase from a review of this song. I think it was on Punk News. Well, because when that came up, I had some similar thoughts, so I thought that was a good way. So it says the second track on the album, Screw Loose, is a return to the hardcore sound that MXPX dabbles in with a song or two on each album. Fans of songs like Get Me Out from Panic and Fist vs. Tact will feel right at home. The only minor complaint with Screw Loose is its sequencing on the album. So this is why I like this, because you just said you love that it's the second song. It says it seems kind of jarring for this song to follow Aces Up. The album would probably flow even better if Screw Loose were moved down the track listing. That being said, I really like the song. I think it's really cool and unique. And so maybe the opposite side of that is, it's the second song. You're like, oh, wow, like, okay, this is different than the first track. Like, what's going on here? It kind of hooks you in a little bit. But I also do understand what they mean there by, it's a little bit odd having the second song, because often for me, like even still, when I go to listen to a new album, I often go to the second song first, because lots of times the first song is, like an intro or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if I went to this as the first track, I'd be like, oh wow, like okay, there's definitely something different going on here. So anyways,
I
guess
dropped my phone into the abyss. I have no idea where it was.
Oh. Do you need it right now?
Well, I was trying to look something up, and then I went to put my phone down, and it's funny. Like, so I can't show you, but there's this bin full of stuff sitting beside me, and it's somewhere at the bottom of that. So I've got some work to do when we're done. Hopefully, no one needs me. But yeah. So sorry, you were just saying it's kind of jarring to go into the second song like so quickly.
Well. Yeah, that was kind of the reviewer's response, and I kind of understand it, but I also think it's kind of cool too to have it like just kind of flip sides. Aces Up is just kind of that fast paced melodic MXPX, and then the second track is like usually with the more kind of hardcore sounding songs, they are a little bit later in the album.
Yeah.
And so to have the second song, it's kind of a cool idea. There's parts of it that on this song that really remind me of Rancid, actually. Kind of when the guitar gets a little bit kind of like jangly jazzy during that second verse.
Right.
It just for some reason really reminds me of Rancid. But yeah, I really like this song. It's got a cool feel to it, and I think it's just Mike kind of losing his mind about the album, and
I did. Yeah, I also did want to say I have this the 7-inch of this, and I love the artwork on it because it comes off very DIY. I don't know if you've seen it. I didn't bring it downstairs.
Yeah, it's just got like that like screw thing or a spark plug or something.
But this is something that's kind of neat about this. It's one thing is it almost looks like it's printed on like they printed it at home and just put it together that way, like very DIY. But what I did want to point out is that the artwork for the 7-inch that we're talking about is actually done by a guy named Mike Moen, who we talked about.
Oh, there we go.
He did the guest on. He was the feature on Chop Shop. But again, it's funny because I found that out after I wrote my note about Chop Shop, and I was like, oh, and also he may or may not sing on another song. So he comes back again, that we'll get to in the future. So he becomes kind of a recurring player for MXPX. So the artwork thing though was a surprise for me. I was looking at the 7-inch and flipped it over. I was like, oh, dang, that's kind of cool, because I just looked up his name and I was like, oh, I know who that is. I can picture him. But yeah, unless I see, now I got to ask you every time, because I think every other time you jump back. Do you have anything else you want to say about Screw Loose?
That is all.
All right, then let's move into Nothing Left. So you're saying you had nothing left to say about Screw Loose. I like it.
That is true.
So for this song, I'd like to know the story behind this song lyrically, because it seems to be a complicated relationship or whatever relationship dynamic that Mike is singing about, because he sort of goes back and forth. Like, I get the impression it's a song about a person who, person A, has stood by and stayed with, whether it's a romantic relationship or just like, a friend or a mentor or whatever the case may be, but stood by person B, and person B just keeps letting them down. But at the same point, they just won't leave. They're never going to kind of leave their side sort of thing. But he sort of goes, he seems to go back and forth a little bit lyrically, which kind of gets a little bit confusing. So I would like to know the story, but musically, it's a pretty straightforward song. I like the fast palm muting in that opening riff, and it really just kind of, the thing about MXPX in this time, I feel, is a lot of their songs start and then just go, right? And that's one thing I really like about these two albums. And Seth Roberts is back doing backup vocals on this song again.
Oh, sweet Seth.
So yeah, he's all over these records. I wish the writing wasn't so small on Secret Weapon, because I was trying to look to see who did the artwork on that. But what are your?
That's a pet peeve of mine. That's a random tangent, but I hate on booklets where, especially there's a few where there's like they're handwritten on the lyrics and like this super small written, and it's like, oh, that's annoying. Yeah, this is, it's a classic fast-paced MXPX song. Every one of their records needs this. This is kind of what their fans have come to expect. I like the flow of the song between the verses and chorus, and that little instrumental part that you mentioned, kind of at the start and in between the chorus and the verses. It just kind of, breaks up the song a little bit. The bridge breaks up the song, by cutting the tempo in half, which gives a little bit of breathing room. And then it ends back on that fast chorus, and it's a very to the point song, structurally and sonically. But I just always love this one. To me, these are the kind of songs that kind of make the album for me, even though they maybe don't have anything special.
Yeah,
I would just, when I hear this song, I'm like, okay, I can get into this.
Yeah, I did want to jump back a little bit. I gave you crap for jumping back, but I remembered something I wanted to mention.
You can jump all around.
So on our Discord that I mentioned earlier, which you can find at growingpunkpod.com, we were chatting the other day with some of the fine folks on there, and Jason from Unoriginal Vinyl, I was just asking, I was like, hey, what are your guys' thoughts on Plans Within Plans and Secret Weapon? And Jason pipes up and says, I actually did I'm on that record. I did gang vocals on that record on Secret Weapon.
What a guy.
So I was just reminded when I was looking for to see who did the artwork, because I was just trying to skim it. I was like, oh yeah. And so his voice was on a couple of the songs we talked about. But so that's jumping back. But yeah, I know what you're saying about Nothing Left, in just being like this song, like you can just go, yeah, I can get into this, which is, I think, for me, a sign of a good MXPX album. That's just what it boils down to. Like, when they're on their game, I feel like even maybe some of those songs that feel like, they're a middle of the road song, you can just get on board because it all flows so well, right? So, and I think maybe that's going back to Screw Loose for a second, in the thought of it being, the second song on the record. And maybe there'd be an issue for me if it was just kind of downhill from there, like, oh, they literally put their best two songs at the front and then the rest was just kind of like work to get through. But this album, I don't think is that way at all. So I find it okay. So did you have anything left to say about Nothing Left?
That is all.
He's got nothing left. Okay. I just wanted to make that joke one more time. So let's move into Stay on Your Feet. So why this song?
I love this song. It's got a really cool guitar riff that makes the beginning of the song interesting, and flows into that first verse where that bass kind of has kind of that cool riff kind of going throughout when he's singing. I like this tempo for MXPX. It's not, as slow as Halftime, but it's a good medium between, the blazing fast and Halftime. And I don't know, just something about that tempo just like hooks me in right away. And it adds a lot to the flow of the song, making the chorus really catchy and easy to sing along to, which is always a good thing. And just kind of an interesting correlation between, at least for me, maybe being a drummer or just tempo can sometimes do that. Just the right tempo, it's like it just kind of almost like gets your body in that kind of swing or whatever. Yeah, there's some great harmonies on this chorus, which I love singing along to. I don't know. I think it's just Mike who does the harmonies on this one.
I think so, yeah.
And then the build up to that last chorus where the drums kind of cut out and the kick drums just going. It just keeps. It's just kind of that anthemic. Put your fist in the air, sing along. And I don't know. This song just always kind of just gets me stoked.
Yeah. This is one that I often find myself coming back to lyrically. It's an excellent, I've said this a couple of times on this episode, it's an excellent example of how good Mike can be. I think it's like right in his wheelhouse when he's at his best. When he's at his best, I actually compare him to a guy like Toby Morse of H2O, whose lyrics I really kind of, it's like when he's writing songs about just being a better person or, keeping your chin up sort of thing, right? Like, yeah, times may be tough, but you've got this, I've got you to help you get this sort of deal, right?
Yeah, good comparison.
Yeah, and I just find that when Mike is at his best writing these kind of songs, I'm like, yeah, MXPX all day, every day, inspiring hope in dark places or even just in your everyday life. And then Mike's bass work, I think kind of where you were talking about where it cuts down to the kick, there's a part where he's playing a bass line towards the end that I just think is really great. I think it's actually the bass line comes in right before it cuts down to the kick. And it's just classic, like Mike Herrera, like punk bass line sort of thing, great bass tone. And he's just busy doing all of his bass stuff. Can you hear the bass solo?
Oh, I sure can. Yeah, I like the positivity on this song, and I kind of like to picture him writing these, like just encouraging almost himself throughout this process. Just keep going, and kind of reminiscent of now that you're on fire. Just there's going to be tough things to do, but just keep going, and things will turn around.
And maybe this is the "You're on Fire" of this record. I think it's probably sequenced in a similar spot. As track 7 versus where do you think "You're on Fire" is?
8. 9.
Ooh.
10.
Yeah, 10. It's hard to read.
Sweet.
That's impressive.
Third guess.
that was like exciting podcast. Exciting podcasting right there. Even if the video works, it's exciting because it's just me like squinting, looking at the back of the vinyl, trying to read what it says in the dark. It's a great song. So let's move into, I guess, the final song that we're going to look at from these two records, and that would be "Far Away." So give it to me, good. Man. Why this song?
Oh, man. Well, this was the first song that many would have heard off this album because it was at the end of the Burning at Both Ends DVD. And I still remember seeing that for the first time and just being like, what is this? Because maybe it says something like new album coming or whatever. I can't remember, but it was just totally unexpected. I thought it was just, okay, credits are going to play and they'll just be playing, a clip from them jamming in their jam space or whatever. And so have a video of a new song just threw me off and got me so excited. And I don't know, to me, this is like one of the best songs on the album, and this is the kind of MXPX that gets me excited. I remember sending this to a few friends that like were kind of into punk when I was years ago, but have grown out of it a little bit, and I sent this to them, and they were like, wow, like this is like some of the best MXPX I've heard in years. And so another comment on that review is that they kind of thought it was a shame that this song was so far down. Had this song followed Aces Up, that would have been that kind of an awesome opening 1-2 punch. But I think it's cool at the end of the end, or kind of towards the end of the album as well. And I don't know, every time this song comes on, I love that opening kind of little riff that adds to it. And I wish there was kind of more stuff like that on this album.
Yeah, lyrically, again, this song is it's really good. And I get the vibes from like the little handwritten note that's inside there where he talks about the captain going down with his ship, and just hoping that they can stay afloat long enough to find land, sort of thing, right? Like, and I get the idea that it was written in this time where it was just like, maybe feeling lost or feeling like, okay, maybe this isn't what we're gonna do, sort of thing. Like potentially the end of the band type deal, right? Like it's just not working. It's a lot of, hard, exhausting work or whatever. And, whether you're sinking in the ocean, land just seems like it's not close enough, you can't get to it. Or it talks about, I can't remember if it's talking about like a fire or whatever, like on land. And it's basically saying like either get to sea or get to higher ground. But, the sea's just too far away and higher ground is too far away and you're just kind of stuck, right? But I think this is the song I was thinking of where it breaks down and he just starts screaming.
Yeah,
then he starts screaming
awesome.
here. Yeah, but then I can't remember if it's the last line in the song or it's right towards the end of the song where he says, "A new day will dawn, just keep up the fight." Just sums up Mike's message pretty well, I think, at this time. And again, it's like what I kind of like when I hold on to, when I look back at MXPX in their career, and I say look back like they're not around anymore, they're still going. I think they found a real sweet spot, by the way, with how they've got their setup going right now. But when I look back on like their library and I look at, say, Life in General, that being a record about, high school basically, and then slowly going the way of the Buffalo being about kind of realizing that, oh man, life isn't all I necessarily thought it was going to be. And then obviously troubles with their label and stuff. And then just kind of coming through and then seeing like where they're at, like at this point, this record, again, I've said it so many times on this episode, lyrically, this is easily my favorite MXPX album.
Oh, wow.
From start. Lyrically, sorry. I don't know. But
I heard that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know I don't know if I could pinpoint a whole album that's favorite lyrically.
Well, I just think
that's cool.
Yeah, I just think because of what they're singing about, and I look at, as an adult, they're clearly adults, right? Whereas like looking back on some of those other records, I'm like, yeah, they were in high school or they were just out of high school and they were dealing with, like learning what life was like and, this, dispute with tooth and nail and just like these different things that I'm kind of like, yeah, that's coming into their songs. Whereas like this stuff, I'm like, he's just singing about everyday stuff, but doing it in a really strong way. And I wonder if, like, I don't know if the gap, I'm trying to think what the gap was between this one and Self-Titled versus this one and Secret Weapon. Like if there's a big gap there or not, like if it's as big, because like, yeah, lyrically, I just think this record is so strong. But yeah, no, this was a good pick. Do you have any more thoughts on Far Away?
No, just cool video, cool song. I thought I remember something about that kind of lead riff too being by a guest too, but I don't know. Because I think at this point, I don't know if they had that second guitar player or not, if they had someone do that on there, but I don't know. I could just be making that up too.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a guest guitar player, it's not listed in. Oh no, sorry, I lied. 100% guitar solo on Far Away and In the Past by Stephen Edgerton.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, he did. Yeah, so yeah, I'd be interested to look back and see which ones I was like, oh, Tom was ripping it up here, and it was actually Stephen Edgerton. But I think there are more than just the two solos on the album, though. So comfortable in saying Tom is still at his best here. But yeah, no, it's a great song. But I did have something that I thought was neat that I sort of found out about this album last second as I was wrapping up.
Hear
kind
this
of prepping.
Fun fact.
So we've talked about features and guest appearances, and there are some familiar names all over the liner notes, especially on the song Best of Times. The Swellers provide the gang vocals on the song Best of Times, and Nick Diener, Nick Diener of the Swellers actually does full-on backup vocals in that song. So I asked him, I was like, because I messaged him, I sent him a message like, hey, we're doing an episode on MXPX, Plans Within Plans, and I saw a familiar name on there, your name, and he's like, oh yeah. So he actually said they recorded their vocals while on tour in Orlando. He had he believes they were in Orlando at the time. He had like a little setup with them or whatever. They did their vocals. And so I got to talking with him a little bit, and I was like, because it seems to be a song about, just like the band having a great time on tour, whether it's one tour or different tours or whatever. And so I asked, I was like, do you think he asked you because, you guys toured together? He's like, I kind of get that vibe, but he couldn't confirm whether or not it was specifically written about, a tour that they did together. He just thinks that Mike asked him because he thought their voices would sound good together. So,
that's cool.
So there you go.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, I was just I was just looking through the vinyl, going through the credits, and I was like, oh, look at that. It says right at the top of the guest spots on the guest features or whatever. That was listed. So, did you have any other songs you wanted to kind of mention from the record?
No, not specifically. It's a great record overall, and I always love going back to it. And I can't picture any songs that I skip on here. I think it's a good variety. It's a good mix. It's kind of if you were into earlier MXPX, this is one that would kind of bring you back. If for some reason, Panic and Secret Weapon didn't do that, I think this one definitely would.
Yeah, I would say I think I agree in the sense that I don't really have any songs that come to mind that I skip on this record. Whereas like Secret Weapon, there are a couple where I'm like I'm trying to remember what the name of. So there's like Bass Solo, which I don't really like off Secret Weapon necessarily. And then there's like one I believe he's singing. I don't know if he's singing I think he's singing in Spanish at some point. I can't pinpoint the song, but I'm always like I also don't remember what album that's on. It could be on this one for all I know. But anyway, I did want to say like these two albums have kind of only grown in likability for me over the years. Like Plans Within Plans, I feel like I liked from the get-go. Secret Weapon I liked, but was a little slower to warm up to. And then just over the years, I just kind of went, okay, like I can get into it. And I think they're full of some of the best songs that MXPX has written, especially for sure, like post Ever Passing Moment. Definitely some of the best songs they've ever written. And Mike grew as a songwriter. From Before Everything and After to Panic, we saw some growth, but I think we saw even more of a growth between Panic going into Secret Weapon and then into this. And obviously, Secret Weapon into Plans Within Plans, a lot of that is, he just aged a couple of years, right? And he was just seeing the world very different than I think he had been for some time. So, but yeah, I love both of these records. So I think that that will wrap up the episode. Unless you had one more, if you wanted to conclude in any way, or are you just going to say,
I need to revisit Secret Weapon. It's bugging me now. I'm kind of thinking like, maybe I just didn't listen to it enough cohesively. Like maybe I just kind of picked through the songs, or kind of knew the ones that I liked that I was going to talk about, or so maybe I just need to listen from start to finish. And because MXPX are my all-time favorite band, so part of me feels bad saying like, I didn't like that album as much, because I like all their albums for different reasons, and so I feel like I need to go and give it a re-listen just to see if I can change my thoughts.
That's fair. So Aaron's going to go revisit it. That's what's going to happen. We're about to get out of here, though, so make sure you go follow us on all of our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, at Growing Punk Pod. You'll find our personal ones there as well. Again, we've got merch. We've got T-shirts with our faces on them, or without our faces on them if you don't want our beautiful faces on them. We're also on Discord. You can find us on there. You can find all the links for that stuff at growingpunkpod.com. That is our website. And coming up, we're starting to do something new here. We're going to call it the show after the show, where we're going to talk about our favorite go-to non-punk albums. That's what's coming up on this specific show after the show, though. So if you want to hear us talk about that, you got to go sign up on Patreon. Remember how I said, like bonus episodes sort of things? It's literally a bonus episode. For $5 a month, you will get bonus episodes. You will get exclusive blogs and some videos and stuff. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. $5 a month if you want to see our faces more.
I just thought of a sweet tagline for the bonus boner episode.
I wish I could just end it right there. But instead
there will be a shirt coming out with that
the
on
bonus boner episode. So go sign up, patreon.com/growingpunkpod, or just go to growingpunkpod.com. The link there is there as well. But that'll do it for this episode. So bye-bye.